Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversation with Calvin, We the Species. By the way, it's today's Earth Day, and that's why we're here. It's April 22nd. I was going to say 1970. It's April 22nd, 2026. The reason why I was going to say 1970 is because I went to the first Earth Day, and I'm with Robert Collin, and I marvel at the universe how we got connected. I don't even remember how we got connected, but you can remind me. But we got connected and we bonded, and he's actually part of the authors group that I'm in because Bob wrote, and that's why we're here. I hope this. I have it on my Kindle. Who gets to adapt? Environmental elites, blue collar communities, and the growing climate divide. If you all, I'm trying to, oh, there, that's better. Okay. Uh, by the way, this stuff is life. It's the future. It's hope. It's your children and your grandchildren. It's the air we breathe and the water we drink. It's life. It's Earth. It's so important. And again, I was a kid, sort of, April 22nd, 1970, and I've never been the same since that event, the first Earth Day, and I jumped into as much as I could jump into. But my being who I am, I don't know if I ever mentioned that to you, Bob. I was so taken back with some of the messages that it changed my whole life around to the point where I realized that cows eat grass and then we take the cows and make hamburgers, out of it, and all that process gives off methane, which heats up the thing. So in 1975, in response to that and recognizing that, I know whatever I was going to do was going to be completely, totally infinitesimal. Nevertheless, I stopped eating everything with four legs
Yes.
and that's a long time ago. You wake up one morning and you look at yourself in the mirror and you realize you have zero coronary artery plaque because and that means the blood flow to this thing up here is unimpeded. There's no plaque up there, and therefore at 80, which I am, I'm functioning at such a high level because I cared about the environment and I stopped eating things with four legs to make a statement and to make me, to reinforce me. But anyway, this is a long-winded, and Bob have been so gracious because, by the way, the book, I have to get it back here. Um, uh, I'll get it back to show you. Okay, who gets to adapt? It was reviewed by Kirkus, one of my favorite book reviewers. I read the review. It's an amazing review. But the last part of it, a well-argued analysis of climate adaptation in contemporary America. So it was a necessary monologue to do this, to set this up, and I'm just thrilled that I'm sharing part of Earth Day with you, and the book you wrote is biblical. By the way, it's like a Bible for survival and for adapting and sustainability and all that stuff. It's a brilliant book. I started it. I started with my note taking. So why don't you do a little bit? And we're together in Kay Wagner's Bold Authors Network. So sometimes I see Bob every week, which is nice. It's even better. And why don't you take it away and do a little bit of an intro, and then we will begin. There's no way we're going to finish, but we're going to begin part of talking about who gets to adapt. Take it away, Bob.
Well, it's really nice to see you, Calvin. And as I told you, and I will embarrass you again by saying it's great to stand on the shoulders of a pioneer 56 years ago. It changed your life personally, but it's changed a generation. And many years ago, I've been a scholar, a successful scholar and activist for social justice for 45 years with legislatures and academia and so forth and grassroots community efforts. Started with homelessness, Then I went into environmental justice, the disproportionate impact of environmental decisions by race, class, and income. Then I focused on cumulative impacts, impacts that accumulate, emissions that accumulate. What does it? So places that have had industrialization for 200, 300 years, the EPA wasn't formed until 1970. It's weak in its enforcement. They are looking at probably 20 to 30 feet of probably toxic waste like lead and so forth. So coming from homelessness to environmental justice to bioaccumulative effects and getting into public health, have a couple law degrees, I have a planning degree, I call it my mess up degree, Master of Science of Urban Planning, and a social work degree, which I love as a community organizer. So I was able to use all this, and as I started this trilogy on climate education, which is helping change the minds of state legislatures, most recently Minnesota, in terms of making climate change in the classroom mandatory for education. Then I went to the Climate Adaptation Generation, looking at young adults, and by young, we both have our perspective. Young can be at 50, but young at heart, I think, is really what I meant when I said it. But I do break down the numbers. I've done, in my encyclopedia research and writing, I've done a lot of research. And more than almost anyone I know the names of all the footnotes and all the people there. And then I was thinking, this is climate adaptation is unfolding by class, by income. It's not going to work, and it won't work because it's not sustainable for the development of humanity, because we need blue collar workers to do the climate adaptation. Now, if they live in very bad places that aren't climate adapted and they have to go work out in the field, they will be double exposed. Blue collar workers do not end up getting Social Security because they die earlier. Blue collar men, 80%. Blue collar women, 20%. They leave about $300,000 of money they paid the government while making those middle wage on a good day blue collar salaries that they never receive. Social Security was set up, as you may know, that 17% wouldn't reach it. Well, blue collar communities, it's about 80%. It's very sad.
Is that
And
right? Is that right?
yeah,
80?
they
Wow.
don't get it because they die. They die. It's so wrong. It's so wrong, Calvin. I don't know of a group or an organization or a union or an advocacy group or a law firm or anyone that can help remedy this wrong. It is an grave environmental injustice that we harm the very people we need. And so when I saw that, I said, Bob, yes, I got to do something about this. I have a duty. I have this knowledge. I can see what I see. This book, while it's quite a tome, was probably about 3 times as long when on the first drafts, because I tend to really try to not miss anything. And I listen to what every stakeholder says in their own voice, industry, government, community, what they say in their own voice. So what I saw was a deep division happening fast. So when I saw that, I said, well, my research has to go deep. People have to have this explained. So I went back deep into colonialism, displacement of indigenous peoples, and I know you might have some relationship with that, and respect that. And also, people forget about is indentured servants. The Welsh, the Irish, some German, very few English. These are young men that, for a ride over Atlantic, agreed to work for 7 years. Most didn't make it. But I have cited letters from kids, they're 17 years old, writing back to their parents in England about how horrible it was. And most of them, they are the genesis of blue collar workers today, is indentured servitude in some ways. Then came African slavery. And all these things pushed a generation of private property ownership for white males only, generally white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, or WASP as we called them, but not everywhere all the time. Nonetheless, this scarred the land. This created the space. Environmentalism was coming out of conservation and Muir and let's preserve the nice wild areas so like in the Adirondacks, the biggest state park in the country. So the rich people can come up and enjoy it for their play and pleasure, not for actual nature. So as I saw this, and one thing that's happened is an explosion of information about exact environmental impacts occurring by census tracts. I looked at cities across the United States. Okay, are you actually doing anything in land use planning on climate adaptation? 82% have the plans. And it's a large number, but they don't have teeth. When I say teeth, I mean where the rubber meets the road, hammer hits a nail, all that. And so on the capital improvements plan is where the money goes for infrastructure. Big money. Bonds for that municipality are based upon that CIP. And that bond rating is extremely important for many complicated reasons that hit the other institutions I'll talk about later. So this CIP program is something there's very little public participation about, tends to be a sort of backroom deal by your first elected body, whether it's city commissions or county councilors. And it's not really that complicated. But climate adaptation is happening, but very sporadically. I'll give you a quick example here. Last spring, a 13-year-old boy was playing in the runoff pond in the housing complex he lived in. A flash flood came. He got sucked down the culvert about 50, little over 50 feet. All the emergency responders showed up. They did everything they could. They would pull him up part way and he got sucked back down. He died. And so why did he die? Because there wasn't a culvert. So that's a climate adaptation. It was a poor housing area. And that we're doing that. So now the region has passed, Montgomery County and Maryland has passed a land use statute requiring culverts on these things. Now, why don't they have culverts? It takes money to buy one, it takes money to retain one on that. But we're doing it all over the place. Miami, New York, look at, New York City, look at the east side. They're building up all sorts of seawalls. They're raising the highway. In New York City, as you know, the subway is underground in Manhattan and gets above. Why is that? So, in terms of highway development with African American communities during the 60s, you'll recall, they just plowed right through them and broke up these communities. That is our infrastructure. So I look at 10 institutions. This may be provocative for some and validating for others. And I've had both responses, and I'm happy to listen to anyone on this, but I look at the banking, I look at military, I look at religion. Now, what we're trying to do is not make people change their behavior. People don't like to be made to, but we're trying to change behavior, so it has to be through belief patterns. What's the one social institution that really does well with belief patterns is religion. So I go into the main religions and talk about how what their text anyway that I could squeeze down into this book would say about climate adaptation. I go through higher ed. Then I do a sociological analysis of interlocking boards of directors. This is C. Wright Mills, right out of the 60s. Maybe I'm dating myself, but there are interlocking boards of directors. They're not good or bad, but they really narrow decision making to the viewpoint of the people on those corporate boards. This will blow you away. They're mainly white males. Yeah, we know that. The white male perspective on risk was studied by an old colleague of mine, Paul Slovic, who has a whole risk analysis center. He's quite the numbers nerd. And so he looked at white males in terms of how much risk we think other people should have, as well as every other demographic, like black females, black males, and white males, as a group, all of us together, right? We're like, they can take a little more risk, but we should at least tell them about it. Well, they pulled out the top 15% income group of the white male category. Boom, it exploded. We don't have to tell them anything. Well, what if it's hazardous and toxic? No, we just do it. It's our right. It makes all us white males look bad. And that is a group that's making these decisions on home equity loans, whether they get enough pull in City Hall to get the road put in by the school so it doesn't flood. My time in Mississippi at Jackson State University, I looked at some of the old Southern universities around there, like Philadelphia, Mississippi, and so forth. There's a basic thing in sewage. It's called a backflow regulator. It's called being civilized. The wastewater goes out and it doesn't come back. It's just a valve. It's not complicated. Didn't go to the black community. You know who gave it to the black community in Philadelphia? The Native Americans locally did that. The Choctaw Band,
Wow.
who I worked with, they're the ones that raised the level on this. And their country area, it's called Rabbit Run. So, we see this stamp all over the country. And the only change that we can do is the change that got it here. And that's land use. Now, your battle about citing a coal-fired plant and area of New Jersey was a great illustration of how land use sadly works. They site concentrate. If one goes in, then nobody else can complain if another one goes in. It's with homeless shelters. It's with everything nasty, even before we knew how dangerous to the public health it is. So I'm looking at the motivation for changing belief patterns, and self-interest doesn't really always get to it. People can say, oh, self-interest, I don't care, so I don't have to deal with it. And what I'm trying to do, instead of rubbing raw the wounds of oppression, as Saul Alinsky, a famous organizer, said, I do a little bit of that just with truthful statements, though, non-judgmental, but truthful statements, is to see a higher place, a light that's better than what we have now. Not just resilience or mitigation, or we'll throw you a seawell in South Miami in the Haitian community. They'll just take the steam off, as Tom Wolfe has said in Vanity of the Bonfire. Just take a little steam off. You're a city person. You know how that works. That taking the steam off, and it can express it ways that are very oppressive. Well, that's not going to work anymore. So the approach I advocate for is flourishing. And this comes from a Harvard study out of the theological school seminary at Harvard, going on 6 years or so, and a very, very intellectually driven, arduous group doing global surveys and so forth. But flourishing means, for me, in one sentence, bringing public health into land use. Bringing public health into land use. Now, I've served on planning commissions. We weren't allowed to look at water. How can you do land use and not look at water? We were not, it's impossible. One thing I advocate, not in the book, but I will eventually, and I have in legislative testimony, is place studies, not case studies. Case studies are a cheap way of learning. They use them in professional schools, law school, medicine, architecture, engineering. You look at a case and you say, oh, I guess I can generalize to every other thing in the world. You cannot do that. The culture and the ecology of every single place is different. And that's why, in terms of flourishing, we have to increase the involvement and power of the local community. Now, power is a different thing. Just because you can grab a say doesn't mean you get your way, right? I've worked with communities a lot. They finally get a say, and then it's decided against them. So, that has to be set up. We need more power. The best power that's informally acted out in our land use landscape is the no, the powerful no. That's what happened in your case with that coal-fired power plant. Yeah, you took them on. Did they put them down there? No. Did they put it anywhere? No. You put the kibosh. That's called the no. Many communities of color are very good at no. It's their only source of power. But if you keep saying no, you won't necessarily get the good stuff either. You won't get the decent schools. You won't get the swimming pools that white communities got way before African American communities. So what we need, and I talk about it in the book, is the flourishing context. And this sounds a little bit abstract to people. So to make it more real, I looked at the city of Frederick. I did a land use planning workshop for Mobilize Frederick 6 weeks ago. And I said, okay, Here's what it would look like in Frederick, because every place is different. We got 4,000 units of downtown Frederick, Maryland, of old 1800s wood-sided dense housing. That's where the blue collar people work. How about we put residential fire sprinklers in each one? Do the math. It's about 20 million. They have other capital. It's over a number of years. Fire insurance rates go down. Here's the swing factor, and here's where flourishing differs from current land use. Flourishing would say, great, lives saved. Insurance, people that don't have insurance, they don't have insurance. It's going to be a wreck. The whole property values of downtown Frederick would sink with a fire. So it accrues to the betterment. It's flourishing. Just looking at residential fire, I figured out how many jobs it would create, and the local politicians like to know about that. And I pushed that, very hard at that meeting. It might be pursuing it. I mean, an outside academic, not part of any political power structure, is just words on paper until someone with power agrees to it. But nonetheless, that's an example of just one thing, one basic thing. Residential fire sprinklers could save lives, could save property, could create a place where our blue collar workforce can stay healthy enough to help everyone get the climate changes they need. And I think that the review, Kirkus was very good, but Amazon put a description of the book there that I hadn't made. And I didn't know they did that. And they did a very good job. But they really caught my attitude with flourishing is that we should never give up on the highest good. We should never compromise mean mode modality. The highest good is a balanced ecosystem where people live healthy lives. Now we're seeing one thing in land use. I saw a story and it just annoyed me to death on how this place had produced a development that was all walking. Excuse me. And it was for pedestrianization. It was beautiful. They wanted the architects, a lot of people volunteered, but it was denied by the county because they didn't provide enough parking spaces for the residences. And so they don't even drive. They don't, I mean, they have the library there, they have the school there, there's a fire engine down the street. All you need is a one cul-de-sac for the turning radius of a fire engine going 30 miles an hour for them to have emergency vehicle access. But I thought, here we have, just like you had this express hope to do the right thing. And a whole bunch of people got together and did the right thing. And then the institutional land use power structure shut this down. And I've seen it, all the transactions that occur in terms of real estate and elected local officials have an EJ edge to it. And in Chesapeake, Virginia, the Board of Commissioners ended up going to jail for the criminality and self-dealing they had for putting waste sites in the black community. And that's in the South when they were blatant, they were arrogant, they got caught easily. It'd be easy for them to get away with that many people have in other places. If you remove the self-dealing, it's not illegal. And so this momentous energy that we in the New World, there's us, the New World, there's the Old World, like Western Europe, but most of the world is the ancient world, by far. As you know, you've traveled all over. And so this New World aggressiveness that we've had looking at land as a way to use it, that there's been Christian stewardship that says that the land is here for us by God to do what we want. Well, like I said, religion is a big belief, and I think it really had a negative effect in this instance on how we respected land, air, and water. And so the earth doesn't lie, the dirt doesn't lie. Darwin's favorite animal, the earthworm, because it creates dirt every 7 years. So, like the lowly earthworm. So we need to include more people in our pursuit of the highest good, no matter what your culture. of kindness. I don't know about love. That's, as they say, a many splendored thing. But nonetheless, a place where people have a sense of place. They did us just basic things, Calvin, like trees, just basically trees. Now, I know that trees create a lot of pollen because they plant only male trees with no females around, because females are considered more messy because they produce the seeds. So we have all these horny trees in the spring and we're all on inhalers. And so I know there's that downside, but that can be taken care of. The property values through trees increase, the health, the temperature. I write about this. One thing that the mass media misses on climate changes is heat intensity. Heat intensity is cooking us. It is cooking us. And when it gets hot, we do what? We turn on AC. Well, I always said that AC settled the South, because without AC in the South, the population would be a lot less and a lot less healthier. So the ability to move in different directions, with my fellow researchers in this area, I've thought of pushing how hope can go forward. And we've been in conversations, and it's not the lack of solutions. It's moving these big social institutions forward. Now, you had a very uh, brave and dominant rabbi that knew Martin Luther King, and you were exposed to amazing people. I'm just drooling with envy, man, and the with that. So you were able to be with someone that can understand what I'm talking about in terms of transcending the normal strictures of our judgments of each other. You will be validated by this book. Things that you knew intuitively and thought intuitively. What has happened with people read it, they start looking around. And I have one chapter, first of all, the frontline defense to climate adaptation is you. What can you do? Don't be relying on anyone else. You are your own first responder. So I have very practical advice with checklists about how to get ready for that. Very practical. Unusual for a book like this. You're not supposed to do it. I just couldn't help it because that's the nature of my personage. But then I talk about planners and bureaucracy and what their role has been in this. And they are quite complicit, but not aggressively so. They serve a master that wants a result. The planning, and I go into this because I think when I studied planning, I thought, oh, planning is very statistical, it's very rational, everything will be fair and equitable, and yay. No, it's really not that way. They've been the facilitator of it. It was New York City planners that went down to the South to help them plan for segregating African communities away from anywhere else, and they were put in industrial communities. Now, another kicker, I hate to be the bummer, but I think it might be a motivator for future generations, is epigenetic effects. The effects of someone that was enslaved could be felt by past generations or for future generations. So the atrocities of World War I and II in the whole region on the Jewish population could be genetically sometimes connected to that brutality. And same with Native Americans. So this new generation learns new knowledge and dials in on genetics way more than we was ever covered in graduate school when we were in school. They have it down. So where does this new knowledge get us? We come to a point of ethics and a point of what's right and wrong. And this is where belief structures kick in. Do you go for reparations? Is that going to be a check or is it going to be a place? And I talk about environmental reparations in terms of place studies. You improve the place and you improve the health of the people. We can flourish that way. Right now, it's tense going into a lot of parts of cities. There's crime, there's concern, there's not it's not, do you feel like it's flourishing, like parts of, is it really flourishing? Is there the community where you played stickball in the street? Is it a place where, mothers could let their kids play the playground until the streetlights came on? And so this is my focus with this. I hope it will make a difference. I think it will. But we go, like I said, start in the beginning, describe it, don't be upset, very
Right.
gentle. Don't want to create opposition, but I want to be direct with the truth. Go through all the social institutions. Uh, in a basic way. It's not long-winded.
No,
Five
you know,
pages.
um, I marvel. I just reprinted just just to have in my hands the 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 mind, your mind, how you chapter 14, inclusive adaptation models, chapter 15, flourishing in blue collar communities, the detail and the things that are a million miles away from consciousness. I'm such a huge fan of your thinking process. I neglected to tell you in the few times we've been together that I actually served for 6 years on my township's environmental commission. And
I'm so glad you did that.
I
Thank you.
did it, and it was quite an experience. Me, actually, for the first year, we met basically every month because and we had to review applications and things, and we had to see the environmental studies and all these things. And because this was new to me 6 years ago, uh, um, I did it as a goof. Never thought they'd select me, and it was a big deal. I
Yeah.
had a, I had a with I had to sign an affidavit, just like respect the Constitution, the whole. It was a big deal. But for 1 year, I kept my mouth shut because I was new, and I was the new guy on the commission, and I wanted to get to feel the lay of the land. And after that, with my background environmentally, I probably knew more than all of them put together.
Yep.
Nevertheless, a lot of that's political stuff. I wasn't political, uh, but it was quite a learning experience, and it certainly my takeaways is certainly balance some of the things you were talking about because once again I lived it and I saw and it's funny when I objected I wanted to be politically soft spoken and I would ask these very provocative questions,
I bet you did.
Oh, I did, and I
Good for
embarrassed
you.
them a number of times. How can you do this? And you're setting a bad precedent. Blah blah. Blah. Well, maybe you're right. I said, well, I think I am right. Anyway, um,
They
uh,
did the so noted, right? They said, "Oh,
yeah,
okay,
and
so
I
noted."
actually stepped down. They wanted to renew my 3 year term. But I just stepped down in December because I'm so busy with the stuff we do with Kay and the
Right.
writing and all this stuff and the interviews. I couldn't do it justice, uh, and I never missed a single commission meeting, and I knew I would have to, so I stepped down. But uh, it was a good indoctrination and it was a good viewing of some of the things you're talking about to see, and this is a fairly upper middle income town, and I'm flirting with upper middle income town,
Yeah.
and it's going to get even more upper because
Yep.
Netflix is coming in a year, and they're building $1 billion studio right down the street. Not in my town, but
All over the country, this division is really increasing, Calvin. You saw an operation, and there's nothing. I mean, you raised their consciousness. You knew you were right. The environment will prove that you're right. One thing about the environmental impact statements, EISs, I've written about them. I developed a municipal environmental impact statement model. And first of all, they came around EPA. I wrote the first book on the EPA, and it was their advisory only. They can make economic impacts. It's a quiet meeting. They do an environmental assessment. You don't even know they're doing it. And then they say, well, it has to reach some type of weird, significant impact is the word. Very litigated word. And then, so if it does an EIS, they form a little group of what they consider selected stakeholders. It meets privately. There's not a lot of public engagement. And it's very seldom people like you or me. But on the one instance, they involved the tribes in Oregon. They took down the dams on the Snake River based upon an EIS. And the tribes were just, we participate on the grounds that we don't agree or disagree or participate or anything, and we hate you. And yeah, and it was like, we put our arms around them because they made it a better place. The salmon are running now. Klamath Falls in Oregon. I worked a lot with that when I lived in Oregon. And potato farmers sucked up all the water, so the salmon drowned. Well, or didn't show up. And so there were kids getting beat up on school buses in terms of fights about the water. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was an engagement with the Environmental Justice Task Force that I helped form. It was the first state agency on EJ in the United States. And I think a problem has been averted and the fish are running again. And so that's proof in the pudding. And I think the proof in the pudding, I don't want you to go back to the decisions that the group you were with made and you saw that they made and you say, well, what if they listened to me? What would that be like? Now, in my models of participation, yeah, we would. We would follow up on those decisions because the land use decisions in terms of trees planted and all that are not really enforced. So it's not we got the permit, see it by. It's we got the permit and the community has a voice in terms of having just the minimal things they get enforced. Now, Japan is a country that's had a lot of emergency disasters. They have had tsunamis and everything. They're really prepared on this. And they've made their playgrounds emergency shelters in case there's a disaster. They have special places, the sewage outlets become toilets. The way the playground is set up is you can snap on stuff on it so people they have separated rooms. Oakland, California is looking at that model. And so all around, Calvin, in the U.S., people are trying, and sometimes, Oakland is an African-American community. Sometimes they're seeing the light of day. And another thing that shoulders I stood on, Hazel Johnson, Chicago, Toxic Circle Donut. This is the early 80s. She's surrounded by DuPont and all the horrible things happen to their population. I visited her there, and we met in a barber shop in the Black community, and it was quite a meeting. Well, she has a daughter that's taken over, and just yesterday, the mayor of Chicago inaugurated the Hazel Johnson Cumulative Impacts Land Use District. And that means it kicks in a whole nother review, so they can't do what they tried to do with the coal-fired planting plant. Hazel, and she was really great local grassroots community organizer, but she was great with the presidents. She met with every president of the United States.
Wow.
And I know how hard that is. We would try, but we might get maybe in the first front door. But she had a persuasion and political power that went far beyond her, and was represented when the mayor of Chicago yesterday signed the Hazel Johnson Cumulative Impacts Ordinance. And that was very hard to get through. Lots of players in the background, players at EPA, including my wife, Robin Morris Collin, really did everything they can to do all the research on it. Industry tried to stop it because like the railroad you were talking about, they always say this. We have a transportation nodule where we have rail, shipping, trucking, and airplane. You get all that together. We want our industry there because it reduces our costs, but it really increases the concentration of pollution. And so that's what they were trying to do. and it's always for economic development. And Hazel Johnson, from her grave, will now toe the line. Now there might be, a Calvin Schwartz land use district at some point. You never know. You never know. You never know. Your legacy can happen long after you're here. So I see these types of changes coming in all across the United States as people begin to do some of the things I talk about in terms of inclusionary processes. Some dashboard public accounting of where the money goes. I always like that. And I just like to know where the money goes. Is that unreasonable? And that is a very difficult thing to get through, amazingly. But this will put us into strict scrutiny with the capital improvement plan, which will say who gets the roads, who gets the transportation. The last point I didn't cover, which is a big point, I didn't cover it, is cleanup. The biggest Superfund site in the United States is in Portland, Oregon. It's the oldest and biggest. And the reason they're doing anything, I was involved with this quite a bit when I was in Oregon, is they have tar balls 15 to 20 feet big floating around the harbor that clogs up the propellers of the big
Is that
ships.
right?
Yeah, and
Big? That big?
oh yeah, I talked to fishermen there, and oh, I got you. Sorry. The and went out with them, and they're like, yeah, it's really bad fishing. Why is that? Well, there's these. There it is. You just see like the surface of them. There's all this stuff sticking on them, and they're like tarry. So as Superfund goes, you have primary responsible parties, PRPs. They are jointly and severally liable. So some have insurance and some don't. So they've been negotiating with each other since the 70s on this one Superfund site. So there's the high priority list of Superfund sites. There's about 1,200 of them, and not much is going on.
Oh, I
Like
know.
then I
Oh, I
mean, New
know.
Jersey has a lot of Superfund sites.
Tons. I think per capita, I think we lead the country. We have to. We one of the original 13 colonies. We started ahead of everybody in polluting, if you want to look at
Yes.
it that way. And actually, I just watched a documentary, how New Jersey really was the focus point of the American Revolution. No, nobody realized it. Yeah, we had a huge battle here, Monmouth Battlefield State Park. But New York and Philly, everybody knew that was the hub, the revolution. But you couldn't get to New York, from New York to Philly or Philly to New York without going through where I live, Monmouth County. Boom. So we have. It's one of the most remarkably polluted states ever. And I used to when
Well, it
I
was a dumping off ground. Staten Island and New Jersey was a dumping off ground
got
for
me
New
off ground.
York.
Oh,
Yeah.
terrible, terrible. And I used to drive through Staten Island, and
Oh,
I would.
really?
Oh, all the time. Well, because we used to go visit. We lived in Brooklyn for a while, and we used to go to Jersey. I lived in Brooklyn for 2 years. Everything is through Staten Island, and I marveled because they had this unbelievable landfill there
Yes.
that was like a mini Mount Everest. And then they planted grass, and they put trees, and they couldn't get rid of the smell. But it was the funniest thing. They covered up this landfill to make it look appealing
The
and
Fresh
nice.
Kills landfill. It's famous. Oh, I've studied it. And they tried to get rid of it in a barge, and it was the barge that was floating around, and no one would take it. And the thing that you saw with them burning it up, throwing some grass, and it's called commercial grass seed. It grows right away, but then dies. But what you saw is some municipalities around DC too. They have an old landfill. They don't want to clean it up to residential standards, only industrial standards. I've fought this at the local level. I want to clean up to residential standards because these are people of color that live here just like anyone else. And I lost that. I got recused with more votes than people present. But what they do now is when you go past it again, I bet they've done it there. In fact, I think they have. They like to create a municipal golf course on old landfill sites because, you know, and
Well,
well, it's cheap to do. They don't get Arnold Palmer Jr. designing it. They just here's YouTube. We'll put one in here, and but that's been one reuse for the older urban.
wow.
I'm not judging it. It's recreational, and the thing is, these landfills aren't solid ground, so they subside. And so it's not a level course all the time. But nonetheless, if they threw in some basketballs, I would say it's okay. To give kids a chance to be outdoors and recreate. Now they could plant what they do plant. There's trees that you can plant that pull the pollution up out of the ground. The Chinese use them for solid waste treatment, and sort of what we would call swamps, but essentially wetlands. And there be all these trees across there that they'll eventually harvest that will have less of the pollutants in them. There is a whole new world of plants absorbing toxins out of the ground in a way that the plants don't become toxic themselves. We can't do that as humans. We got to get a lab truck and test tubes and figure out
Well,
stuff. And even
I gotta ask you a question that just popped into my head. Let's say they go to Staten Island
hmm
and on this monstrous mountainous landfill, and they plant apple trees. All right, and so I'm asking, and it just popped into my head. So they plant apple trees. Uh, uh, would those apple trees that bear fruit, is that fruit going to be safe to eat? Is that a good
uh,
question? Is that a good question?
for humans,
Yeah, yeah, for humans, sure.
I would.
Would you eat it? I know. I don't think I would, just in
I
general.
would taste it. If it was sour, I mean, if I tasted metal, apples have arsenic in the seeds. People that eat whole apples are eating little bits of arsenic. And my father would eat the whole apple. They do that in the Marines, I guess. I don't know. But the heavy metals would be brought in on the uptake of those roots and would be where the fruit is, probably in greater concentrations than just the fibrous structure of the tree. The one clue about that is if you see a lot of dead bees around the tree when the flowers are there. There's Native Americans know a lot more than we do about things like that, and they know if a water hole is poisonous by what's around it in ways that I couldn't tell. So you look at the insects that would normally be around there, and they're not. The growth would be stunted, probably a little gnarly. It depends what waste they put them over. If they put them over a bunch of dead bodies, it could do well. That's a whole new way of burial, by the way, here in Maryland. You know, put in a bag and put a tree on you. The But that's a question that nowadays kids could answer. I would be no, I wouldn't let pregnant women, babies, people over 81. I would not. I would be very anyone with any type of a kidney or liver function because that's where the heavy metals would hit when it was trying to clear it out in your system. But lead accumulates, and lead is very damaging to the nervous system, as you know from your science studies. And the levels of lead when I was an expert witness in Flint, Michigan, before it was water, it was air. There are 47 census tracts in Flint, Michigan. And there's one that's all black, mainly black. And they're putting this incinerator in. It's a very special incinerator. It was meant to burn the leaded paint from 1970s paint. Huge amounts of lead. Lead is very heavy. When metals come out of an incinerator, they disperse to the ground faster because they're heavier. These kids are through the roof with lead. And that was the old standard. They've now made it tighter, but it creates aggression in the classroom. It creates a lack of impulse control, uh, which you really don't want in a developing adolescent. But then years later, guess what happens? Flint, Michigan becomes what? Water pollution, right? So land, air, water, and us. We're mammals. We the species, like you say, that's what attracted me to your show, by the way. We the species. I think like that. I think like that. And that's not a sustainable approach to poison each other with these lead things. And it's awkward because there's no legal remedy really. You can get fancy, and there's a famous movie. They're toxic torts are called. The burden of proof is so high. The cost of litigation to get in federal court has to be a minimum of $10,000 for damages, or you're not even looked at. Jurisdiction is quite limited. So where do we go but where we are right here, right now, talking to each other on a podcast about how we can empower the local community. So if you're the one, that's right. If you're
Show
the
that.
one
Oh,
person,
lost it again. Okay.
if you're the one person like Calvin or myself, we stop the process.
Oh, there it is.
We did this with Al Gore years ago, Robin and I. We were on a committee, a federal advisory committee. It was called CSI, before CSI, the Common Sense Initiative, because there had been a proposal from Newt Gingrich about why have any environmental regulations? We'll just use common sense. He wrote a book on it. Carol Browner, then head of the EPA, said, "Well, I'm just going to do a federal advisory committee. I'm going to put Collin on it." And so we got into this Common Sense Initiative, and we were with the printing sector. Now that's dinosaur. Emails, e-stuff, internet was coming in. They do church programs. They're do-gooder guys. So they were desperate for some kind of involvement that would get them with the community. It was a simple thing. We won the Hammer Award from Al Gore, little tiny hammer, and not useful for anything, but I love it. And what we did, the printer comes in. I'm going to have these volatile organic chemicals as an emission because it comes with inks, right? And what do you think about that? And you can come in and you can talk, and if there's no problems, we'll move on, right? And if there was a problem, they got 3 more weeks of public engagement and discussion with government, industry, and community. All they need to do is buy a little time. You couldn't have bought time in your meeting. I mean, if you wanted to, you could say, well, I'll table this. And yeah, that only goes a couple meetings. So if we could buy a little time to bring the collective forces of us together with the knowledge we have and the way things are digitized now, you're doing this podcast. Can you imagine trying to do that and you have been on TV, so you know about how this is a powerful mode of changing people's minds. And I think, and the Amazon description of the book gets it right. I don't know where they got these from me because I never told them, but I said, you usually win the argument when nature's on your side.
All right,
And
I got to stop because we have
yeah,
a hard stop.
yes, sir.
Um, you have to come back because we have lots more to talk about.
I'd
And
love to. I'm really glad to have met you,
yeah,
Calvin.
yeah, ditto, ditto, ditto. There's so many parallels to our universes, and so who gets to adapt is on Amazon. Um, I'm trying to show it, hold it up. Who gets to adapt? I actually next time we do this, I have it on my Kindle. This is such essential reading for everybody who's a kid, who's going to have kids, and who's going to be a grandparent. It's so critical. It's so essential. It's life. It's life in so
Thank
many
you.
different ways. So we got to stop because I'm getting interviewed myself momentarily on this a very very important day and truly Earth Day is such a critical day. I have to go down to my basement and find some of my. I saved some stuff from the first Earth Day. I have to look and next time. Oh yeah, show. By the way, show that. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for that. Uh,
Shit from a pioneer? Are you kidding? I actually ironed it for you.
and you ironed it too. That's even better. I mean, I designed that 25, 30 years ago. Uh,
Oh, that's
uh,
amazing.
and
So far ahead of your time. No one
so
was
far
doing
ahead of
it.
my time. Really, really,
I'm glad
really,
you
really.
lived a long time so you can catch up on all the good you did.
Yeah, well, I'm working on it. It's still ongoing. So I'm going to stop recording to everybody. This actually will be up next week, next Wednesday, a week after Earth Day, but that's fine. This will be continued, you and I, Bob, for sure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We have lots more to do here to get people to understand and read. Thank you. I'm going to stop recording. Don't leave. Boom.